There we go. Hey, Timothy Goodwin. Oops, can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Oh, wait, you're muted. Yeah.
There we go. How's that?
That's perfect. I can hear you. So,
Good.
so we're here. We're live on. We've got 5 folks in the waiting room, so I'm about to let them in. And this ends up being a free conversation that goes in whatever direction it's going. But you're here, and the reason why I wanted to, this is the week before the election, and all of the electable seats are up over here in the Hartford Board of Ed. And so next week, our conversations are every Wednesday. So next week, next Wednesday night, we're going to do one of those Imagine a World places, right? So next week we will have our new Board of Ed, we'll know who they are, and start thinking about our wonderful ideas on what this could be. And this week I want us to start thinking about, we're going to get ready to vote for folks, but what is it that we're voting for, and what are the issues in education in Hartford? What are the issues that create roadblocks? What are the issues that create these places where we can actually come together and flourish? And you're here because you've been doing education for a while, and you've been doing it in Hartford. And for this conversation, like very often, I think it's important to have folks who've got teeth in the game or whatever it is. Like I was in a conversation earlier and someone said, what's skin, right? So they have that skin, which I think is important. But this is political as heck, and it shouldn't be. And so my soul, right, the place where I get upset is like, how do we make education and educating our children political? Oh, that's awful. But it is. So inviting you here as someone who is an outsider, who has been an insider, who cares so much and so deeply, I figured this is a great place to start the conversation. So
just to say quickly with you and I don't know how you don't make it political, because it's been political since 1900. So, I mean, anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So, anyway.
Okay, so come introduce yourself. So folks are here. Hello, beautiful people. And it looks like, hey, Brian, hey, Natasha, hey, Leslie, Shantae, hello, Alicia, hello. Let's see, Barbara's iPhone is coming in. Hello, Barbara's iPhone. And folks on Facebook, it'll take me a second, but I'll pull you up on my phone and I'll try to get any of your questions, comments, and concerns in here. But I just kind of sort of halfway introduced Tim. Tim, who are you? And tell me why this has to be political.
I don't know how many people heard that, but my name is Timothy Goodwin. I'm the executive director at Community First School. Started out working in Hartford many years ago, about 25 or 30 years ago, when I was running the scholarship program for students. Eventually went on to Hartford Youth Scholars Foundation, founded that in 2006, back when Mayor Perez was the mayor. Mixed feeling. I loved the organization, but felt like in some ways we were supporting students, not enough students. We only had a few that we were supporting, and thought that there's got to be a way to help more students. Went on to become, after another stint with a different nonprofit we started, which was an inter-district nonprofit in Simsbury, which brought Simsbury and Hartford students together on a farm, very neutral type setting to bring people of different ethnicities and cultures together. Then went to become principal at Weaver High School. Lasted about 3 years before it was very clear that the district wasn't interested in radical reform, at least at that time, in the way we were doing it. Decided at that point, after having been in the system as a teacher and a principal and sort of an outside the system in the nonprofit world, and seeing what was under the covers, that there had to be a better way. So met with many people throughout the North Hartford community, because that's mostly where I had worked throughout my entire career: North Hartford, Windsor, Bloomfield, Avon, sort of this mix of suburban affluence and less so in sort of Hartford region, and decided that we would talk about how we could do it better. So we spent about 3 years, myself, Denise Bass, Naisha McCauley, several other people, just really discussing within the community. We went to Ebenezer Temple, we went to 2550 Main Street. We just held at the Pond House, Keeney Park Pond House, held many different community meetings to try. Artist Collective, the late and great Cheryl Smith hosted us several times there, just to talk about how we could do it different. We came up with the idea of Community First School. We decided to write for a charter. We were told by the state at the time 2017 that we were 3rd out of 6, but there were already 2 charters in North Hartford, Jamoki and Achievement First, even though we're very different from Achievement First. Our name, Community First, was actually in some ways developed in opposition to some of the Achievement First philosophies. But we told we weren't going to get it, so we just said, I guess the journey may end here. But we met again at the Keeney Park Pond House. And a lot of people said, look, why don't we get together and just see what we could do? And they said, why don't you open independent? Because now you have nobody to answer to, and you can really do it the way the community wants. And so we said, well, I don't know how you do that because, shoot, we don't have any money. It's $11,000 a child that the state gives you if you are fortunate enough to achieve a charter status, and then the legislature approves the funding. Ironically, not to go too far off on the side, but the state has not funded new charters. Even the 2017 charters were not funded because the pendulum has sort of swung the other way, away from charters and magnets and more toward neighborhood in general. Therefore, there hasn't been new charters since then. So, but we were happy to move in that direction. We opened up last year in the middle of the pandemic with 12 students. We now have 17. Shantae, familiar face over many years, but now she's working at Swift, where we're located. We're 50 Love Lane. We're part of the Swift Factory campus, and I'm just excited to be trying something really different. I don't try to say, a lot of schools come in, they say, we're going to do it better. We're going to do it right. I'm trying to say we're doing it different. We're trying to do education different. Take what I've learned, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and really try to do something different. When we say anti-racist, we really want to mean that. When we say we don't want to continue with a structured racist system, that means we really don't want to continue with a structured racist system, and we'll actively try to find ways to flip the script so that that system is not being utilized, at least in our building. And going back to the very first comment, and I'll just stop talking, I've been taking up a lot of airtime right here, but you talked about it not being political. Why does education have to be so political? When I look back to the formation of public education around 1900, it was developed not for those that would be running the economy or where wealth would be housed. It was developed to make sure that those who were not wealthy had something to do to keep the wealthy wealthy. So most students in public education were meant to be workers, service workers in some place in the lower stratosphere of the economy, while the wealth stayed in the hands of those that were at independent schools like Loomis Chaffee or things of that nature. We're familiar with some of those here in the area. Ms. Porter's, Loomis Chaffee, Westminster, et cetera. The list goes on and on, Taft in Watertown. But then and Black folk in some ways, from my research, were a bit isolated from that because there was segregation. So they were sort of outside that system. But once segregation ended, and now more and more Black people were in the public system, it was not okay for them to have jobs that the lesser whites had. So what ended up happening is lower wage service and incarceration became the avenue because there couldn't be too many Black and brown people moving up through the system. I believe that system that was created for the economic way of the United States, which was not great for lower class whites in the early 1900s, is now even worse for Black and brown folks, especially in urban communities like Hartford, and continues to be really the foundation of education in the United States. And places like Connecticut, it's still there in what was developed in the 1900s, and it still is not working. And if anything, really damages Black and brown youth more so than is advantageous to them, making it into prosperity here in Connecticut. So that's what I mean by political. It began as a political system and has continued to be so ever since then.
And is tied to some monies that come in some strange ways that create some interesting and strange bedfellows. And you mentioned Shantae. Shantae, I'm really not trying to put you on blast right here, right now. But you're a Hartford human, you're a mother, you're someone who's been in field for a long time in all of the different ways, and you're on our board of ed. Tell us a little bit about what you see going on and what you think we should be paying attention to as this election is coming up.
I always say I'm the most non-political politician. I don't really consider myself a politician. I don't ever want to be that. I I don't mesh well with that. I just from the moment my oldest started public school, even before that, when she was in daycare, if it was a parent meeting, I was there. I wanted to know everything that was going on in any place that my child was a part of. And that led me to where I am today. But it was never just for her. It was always for, I'll tell you, when she was about to be entering school, my mother said, I was on the phone with her. She was living in Georgia at the time. She said, I feel sorry for that school because she knew I would be present. I'm going to be holding people accountable, but at the same time, working with the schools. I've never been the type of parent that will not hold my child accountable. I'll do that, but at the same time, I'll equally hold the school accountable. When I'm not a part of political circles, so I am not a part of certain conversations. That doesn't bother me at all. I am laser focused on education, but not just in the school system. I clearly understand, well, I clearly believe, I should say, that I think our issue is before school, before a child ever enters school. That has been always the platform I've tried to bring to light. It hasn't been successful. What Tim said, he mentioned Ebenezer Temple. That's where I once worshiped. That's where space was always made available to me to engage the community, to engage families, to help them know education is important, to try to get in the parents' ear and do all of those things. It was successful, but not on the scale that it needed to make the impact that's needed in Hartford. If you receive children in your school system, we receive them in our school system. And if they come to us with not where we need them to be, let's just put it like that, wouldn't you think as a school system, don't we have to figure out something before they get to us? There has never been an appetite for it. I've been trying to raise it. Because now we test kindergartners. It's an assessment. They come to us and you're saying they don't have a skill set. We're not working with families before the children get to school. So in that regard, I don't understand that, but it is so much going on that you have to decide, at least with me sitting on a board of ed, what am I going to focus on? What am I going to tackle? Because there's so much and we only have 24 hours within one day. So it's hard work. At the same time, like, you have to know that you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. You can't look for someone to give you applause or any of that. You're not going to get that. So you have to know that you're doing this for the right reasons and for children and for families. But for the life of me, that's one thing that I do not understand, is the before they get to us. Why aren't we investing there instead of playing catch up when we receive the child? It's plenty of organizations that work with young people that could be tapped into. It can be an alignment. So some things, sometimes you have to think, like, is this intentional? Because it's not rocket science to me. So I'll hush for now right there. And I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. And like right now, straight up, thank you, right? So thank you for everything that you do over the years. Thank you for when you've advocated for my family personally, but thank you for everything that you do for all of our families, because what you do truthfully is thankless. And we've got to deal with the fact that in so many of these positions, people are running for office because it's their idea of a stepping stone, right? And so Board of Ed is I can get in the Board of Ed, and then I can get to here, and then I can get to here because I've got these political aspirations, right?
I don't want to go nowhere else. This is quite enough. Like, and you see it. I'm in rooms that people aren't in. I know when we on stage, and I know when we not on stage. And it's so much work to be done. And it can become discouraging, but when you love young people and you love families and you love Hartford, you're always you're recharged when the head hit the pillow at night. But it is a lot of work to be done, and it's a lot of things in a way.
So I want to jump into one thing that Shantae said before we lose that thought. She said, is it intentional? And why isn't something being done at younger ages? And so we at Community First School decided to go with kindergarten. We had all the different ages, and the community back and forth finally said, let's go with the babies, because the school system is not providing for students all the way. They fall farther and farther behind every year. And I want to start with this to say, Shantae, it is intentional, either on purpose or not even knowing, but the system is intentionally harming Black and brown students in places like Hartford. It does not want them to succeed. I want to start there, because if you look at the evidence and you see that as truth, now you know how to attack the problem. If you're trying to attack the problem as if, if we put this program in or spend money on this paraprofessional or money on this or that, you might move it a little bit, but you still have a system that is damaging children. So you have to understand that, yes, this is intentional. I think you're right on. And I don't want to be, this is a place I can safely say it. In other places you can't say it because it can cause detriment to your career. But the reality is it is intentional. And the reason we know that to be true is because we look at how students are tested at kindergarten now. But they're tested at kindergarten to prove one thing, to prove that there's less capacity in places like North Hartford. So if you can get someone to test low in kindergarten and you let them know that, either you show them the score or you tell the parents or whatever, or you tell the other teachers, now you have this narrative that somehow the student's behind. That's BS, because every student that we have at Community First School is not behind anymore because of how we manage and how we're doing education. We're valuing the ethnicity and culture of the person. We're not teaching from a Eurocentric background. We're not trying to we're a no suspension school. We have no chronic absenteeism, because we are building the school to avoid those structured racist foundations. The school system as it is built today is not looking to change those structures. Therefore, the students continue to fall farther and farther behind. When I was principal at Weaver High School, going to the other end, 60% of our students were not meeting state standards for graduation, but we were graduating them anyway. And when we would bring that to the district, they would say, you're going to die on that hill, or you're being insubordinate, or whatever it was. But we were, be a good soldier, keep your mouth shut, and put the students through. But I had most of my students were 3 or more grade levels. Most of my students were 3 or 4 grade levels below. So here we are trying to move students up within a system that was keeping them down. So I just throw these stats out there to say that this is intentional. And I think what we need to do is think about, how do we change the intention of what we're doing? And the first thing to do is to recognize how the system has been set up to not really advance children the way they need to be advanced. It doesn't respect them, their culture, or their capacity as learners.
And intentional, I do want to clarify though, and what I meant by intentional is not that I don't think that, I don't believe, I wouldn't even serve on a board in a system that I believe is intentionally just not educating children. I've worked along some awesome individuals. I was a substitute teacher for 4 years. So when I say intentional, I'm saying if the school system is just focused on the school system, you can't just focus on the school system, because it has to go into community. So intentional on the part of, it's bigger than the school system. I'm saying like the city, we have millions and millions of dollars that pass through. So to not have a program that's linking babies to, from babies on. And I've tried, because there's the Hartford Foundation. I attended a facilitator training many years ago, and it's simple work. We have libraries. So I'm not nowhere near saying that I don't believe we have a school system that is intentionally failing families and children. I believe we could do much better. That's why I serve. But as a city, we have to wheel it in to do better work on behalf of our children.
So let me just.
And
So if the
I want, yes.
Just quickly, if the system is not willing to really bring the community in, if the system is testing children without really the desire to see those scores improve, but it's just watching them get worse and worse. If the system is not creating an environment where students want to be, so chronic absenteeism rises. If that's what's happening, then how is that system not corrupt at its foundation? And I'm not.
You're saying a system, Tim, is not. You're saying a system as if every school fits that. Every school doesn't fit that. Some school does do things very well. Some schools are intentional. So I could never speak of a school system negatively. We have plenty of schools where children are thriving. Plenty of schools where children are doing well. The school system as a whole absolutely is room for improvement, but I've been in many of our environments that are doing things very well. So that's why I don't group it together.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to incriminate teachers either, because I've served alongside many dedicated teachers too, but we have a collective bargaining agreement that does not favor students, and most good teachers will keep their mouths shut instead of really pushing back against some of the inhibitors within the bargaining agreement that keep us from serving children well. But the other piece is, and I will say, there's schools like Breakthrough Magnet that have had great success. Achievement First has had success, but has with a certain group of students. Often students who don't fit that mold are pushed out. So there are a few schools doing well, but in general, when you look at the system as a whole, there's always this, and here's another piece I want to bring up, and I'll be quiet after this, but there's always this idea that a few Black and brown folks can make it. And I know you know about it, it's the exceptional Black theory. You have Barack Obama's out there, they can make it. But in general, okay, so you got your breakthroughs that will serve a few Black folks, but don't let, white folk aren't gonna let thousands of Black folk from Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven make it, because it'd be too many. But the exceptional Black, that's okay. So you can have a few, you can have a breakthrough, you can have an Achievement First for a few. If we take the city out of the kid and turn them more white. And there's Jamoki does a great job, definitely does a great job. But in the end, the system is not gonna allow for large numbers of Black and brown folk to be successful. So most schools are not going to be what you described. This is what's happening in this city. I'll be quiet now, but these are all factors that have to be looked at, because this system has not produced a quality education for decades. And it can, because every student who comes into Community First is capable of greatness. And there are students who came in who were suspended day after day after day, isolated. I have a student in the school who was isolated on his own, restrained several times, written off, straight to jail. Kindergarten, already going to jail. He's our top performer. He's in second grade on grade level. Took 2 years to get to that place, well, a year and a half. But this is the capacity of every student at Wish and every student at Sand. But if you look at the records will not show that. And that's what I'm talking about. In general, the city is not serving its students. It's just not. And I believe it's intentional at some level. Not each teacher, certainly. I'm not going to say the superintendent, but or even the staff. Sometimes we don't even realize, but this system has been structured in a way to keep large numbers of urban students from accessing success. And I'll quiet.
And
Well,
that's
thank
that's,
you.
yeah, Brian.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Shantae, too. Shantae, I want to say I saw you fight the other day in the board meeting. I saw you put it down. Everybody was against it.
I'm tired.
I saw you be independent. So when she said that, she meant that. So salute to Shantae, for real. Tim, I don't want you to be quiet. I don't want you to be quiet at all. I want you to share your ideas. I want you to share the problems that you see, so that we can all be better at the end of the day. And my question to you, because you mentioned the school system being corrupt and it being built against our students, our babies. So, if you could just pick out, where do you primarily see that? Is it in the curriculum? Is it the personnel? If somebody had a magic wand and said, hey, we can do something about this today, what should be the first thing that they attack?
So I think it's a dangerous point, because we're in a dangerous place in right now in Hartford and even across the state and the country, because it's very cool to talk about anti-racist. It's very cool to talk about structured racism. So you can hear that over and over now, but because it's good. We were talking about this 3 years ago, and Travelers or Lincoln Financial, whoever we're trying to get money from, would say, you can't talk like that. We can't fund you if you talk like that. Well, now if you talk like that, it's cool. And people say they want to fund you. But Malcolm X used to say, I'd rather have the fox in the hen house than the fox in the hen's clothes. And when I think about that, I think about our education system. People are going to talk like, oh yeah, we want equity, okay? But if you want equity, then you have to make the changes for it to be equal. But the system is not built to really do that. So if there's one thing, what's one major factor would be the fact that we still teach from a very Eurocentric perspective. That's starting to change, which is important. But we still talk about race. There's a human race. There are different ethnicities and cultures that need to be valued. And within the curriculum, you need to value those ethnicities and cultures right from the start. You also need to value your place. When I was working at Martin Luther King 5 years ago, piloting what we're going to do at Community First, I'm working with teachers in that school that had never been to Keeney Park, even though it was right across Ridgefield Street. So how is it that you are across from one of the nicest, really, ultimately? I mean, I know there's a lot of negative view sometimes of Keeney because of what could happen there at night or whatever. But the reality is, it's a beautiful park. And we have teachers that don't know it, students that are scared to go into it. But yet you have all these natural resources. You have Keeney Park Sustainability Project. You have all these organizations that are helping to build the park up, but the students are kept from it. So I'm just thinking of all these ways to value. If you value the place you live, you value yourself. If you value your ethnicity and culture, you value yourself. If you value your skin color, you value yourself. But we as an educational system have not been putting that into our teaching. And it's hard, and the staff that are there aren't often asked to do that because they're so focused on test scores, when the tests aren't really meant to show improvement, but they're meant to show a gap. And we focus so much on that doesn't matter, that now we have this opportunity to show value in ethnicity, culture, place, and we're not doing it because we're focused on these other things. But the reality is, if you do value your place, you value yourself. So that's one piece, is just within the curriculum, taking it to a place where you start to value those that you're serving. There's this belief within and white teachers, right? We got about 80% white teachers in the city right now. In 1980, it was about 60%. So that number is going the other way, okay? So you have people who are coming from backgrounds that don't understand the people they're serving. It's actually going the other way in education right now, although the state has several measures in place to try to change that. So it's very hard.
And that right there, I just want folks to think about when we're talking about a system and how a system works, because there are campaigns and there are programs. And I'm a huge Jeffrey Canada fan. And if you care about education, if you care about Black and brown children and you don't know who Jeffrey Canada is, write that name down and then go Google it and learn a thing after this is over, right? But there's a place where we need to center ourselves and our children, and the system creates a place where we're not centering ourselves and our children. And there needs to be a place where we can have conversations. I am Hartford. I love Hartford. This is what we're going to do. But coming up and creating places for us to have these different conversations. One of the things I value about Tim's perspective is what you heard is like, okay, we've figured out how to do this. So we've got the right school that's going to do this right. No, not so much, right? But we've got this idea and we've got this school that is working for these families here, because we need lots of different places and lots of different things. So white supremacy tells us that there's this way to do things and everyone's got to figure out how to fit in. And if you don't fit in, you're wrong. So when it comes to thinking about the system, we've got this overarching thing here. And breaking out of that is figuring out how do we support each other, and how do we create a place where Tim's wonderful, great idea, which is a great idea and stands alone, is in no way in conflict with my wonderful and amazing and great idea, which needs to stand alone. So Shantae, you're talking about that gap, and y'all know I just turned 50, so let's just get old. I worked for the city of Hartford in a different lifetime in the early learning centers, right? And so they started off, when I started working there were city of Hartford daycare centers, and I was there for about 16 years. And in that time, we in no way collaborated with the school system and in no way collaborated with the Board of Ed. And it was very clear and very important to absolutely everyone that the daycares were daycares, and the daycares were located within elementary schools. And there is this clear delineation of power, respect, whose kid is who, how to, like, we had kids, so we had the kindergartners, and we'd have the kindergartners, they'd come into us in the morning, they'd go off to kindergarten, and then they'd come back to us for the rest of the day. And so we are the adults who are in charge and stewarding the lives of these beautiful young people in front of us. And we're not collaborating with each other because fuck them Board of Ed, fuck them City of Hartford, right? And then the Board of Ed at some point before I left the city decided they were going to open up their own early learning centers. And so the City of Hartford early learning centers that were NIAC accredited in no way wants to, and it was just this ridiculous nonsense of, but they're all our 3-year-olds. These are all our 4-year-olds. And if it's so important, and believe me, that was a really important part. We need to prove that our kids were going to test better in kindergarten than those kids who went to the Board of Ed. Like, what the fuck kind of crazy nonsense is this? Then you add in other agencies and what this looks like. But this is what we're doing here in the city of Hartford. I don't know. I know that there's other communities, and this is not theoretical. I was a part of that. And we were sending our kids to kindergarten, making it clear to them that the right way to care for them was by not interacting or communicating or respecting the other human beings who cared for them.
Yeah, that's very problematic. We're never, I'm telling you, is enough work for everyone. And then, because when you see those, just what you described, Kimora, that's like, it goes even like sometimes in a nonprofit world, like, I don't want to work with them because I'm going to go after that grant and everybody's money, and not the focus. To me, it seems like is less on who needs to be served and funding the organizations that serve. So it's so much on funding, and you're worrying about how you're going to survive the next year. And we lose sight of why we all do the work we do when we're involved in, educating young people and nurturing young people. Because those young people are going to become us, right? Like, it's just like a disconnect. Who do you think they are? Like, how are we not focused on our young people when that's our future generation? Though it's like, I don't get it. And I don't even try to so much, because I don't even want to understand that way of thinking or ever, operate out of that space. But we have to do better. We have to make those connections, and we're not going to even let, I don't have a bad relationship with the mayor. I know some do. I don't, but I'm gonna, like, I'm a constituent, right? I'm going to start asking for things, because I never ask people for anything, but I do have an ask. And when I've seen them as of late, I'm like, I have to get on your calendar. And that is my ask. What are we doing because it's stuff that's already designed. When I tell you this training I went through years ago, you don't have to create it. I have it in a notebook. It was a 3-day training. It's something you just have to do. You have to get people on board to do it. And our city has the ability. But this work cannot be done without our city leader, without our mayor saying he's going to commit to it. And it shouldn't even be an ask. It should be a demand. It's not hard work at all, but.
So I'm gonna interrupt you really quickly. And I'm just gonna say that this is where we all, that beautiful place, like if you have a shirt or a button or something somewhere that says support Black women, listen to Black women, any of this stuff, if you're a Hartford person and you happen to see Luke in Hartford at any point in time, ask him if he's met with Shantae yet, right? Just that, yell at him across the street in a costume if you have to. But if you find yourself in conversation in space with Luke Bronin, this is how we do it. This is how we hit those uncomfortable places to do the thing that needs to happen, right? So Shantae, the conversation that you need to have with Luke, I like to think that I have control of myself, but people who saw my live on Monday know I kind of lose some control of myself when I become passionate, right? So I'm not the right person to have a conversation with Luke, but I am the right person who, if I see Luke, I can say, have you talked to Shantae yet? Because you need to talk to her. So everyone here, your assignment for the week, for Luke Bronin everywhere you go. And when you see him, accost him with, have you spoken to Shantae yet? But Leslie, you had your hand up. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'll just be real quick, but Tim, oh my God, thank you for telling the truth. I mean, we need to tell the truth because we can't fix anything if we keep ducking and saying, oh, we just have to put more money and do this and do that, when the whole system, we need a revolution. I did volunteer work in Wish School and Quirk School in the 90s. And I'm telling you, I saw the lies, I saw the BS, I saw the teachers that barely knew where Stowe Village was, and it was right there, So I've seen the brokenness for a really, really long time. And I just am so happy to see somebody tell the truth. And for the people running for the Board of Ed, it's really going to take a revolution. So what you do to be part of the system and think it's going to work, I don't know, because you've got to face what is the truth here. And Luke, definitely, they do not want change. That is a given. That is so obvious. I mean, I don't even have to have kids in school to know that. They do not want this change that Tim's talking about. So if I was going to be on the Board of Ed, I would get the parents involved, and every day just get, people to speak out, because it's going to take a revolution, you guys. You can't do it as the board with barely a staff person, and it's a setup for really a lot of frustration, I think. So anyway, not to be grim, but I'm really big on telling the truth, because we don't tell the truth, we're just spinning. So
districts don't tell the truth, and they can't tell the truth because the truth is too ugly. But the other piece is, a lot of times boards mean well. They're great people. But ultimately, the questions become more softballish, and the superintendents and the staffs, they know how to fudge the data and make it seem like everything's good, and they will create their narrative using data that helps support their narrative so that they can maintain their positions. And I don't mean like you're not trying. I'm not saying it's diabolical. It's just people being people. But there is a system that's in place, and in order to maintain that, one superintendent over another superintendent, it's about keeping that system. It really is. And so no one really ever bucks it, because there's a lot of money in that system. But the reality is, it's going to continue to damage children in places like Hartford, because it's not meant for those students to succeed on a large scale. It's not meant for them to succeed on a large scale. And until there is radical change, it's hard. This is not easy. It's not something you could just come in and say, oh, I want to create radical change. It's got to be step by step dismantling this system, and that's a tough challenge. But it's the truth. And when you talk about money, there is so much money pouring into education. I could not spend my money as principal. There was no way I could spend it all. I had too much. People talk about resources. I had more money than I could spend. If I wanted to spend it on Black and brown teachers, I would be stopped. We hired 9 out of 11 new staff when I was principal at Weaver. 9 out of 11 were Black or brown. And it was discouraged by the union because I was bringing too many Black people into the building. That's the truth, okay? That's the truth. And additionally, I had money to spend vans so I could get children out into the community, out on field trips. You know how long it took to get through the hoops to get those vans because the district didn't want to spend the money? And I was told as principal, give the money back to the city. it would be good if I gave the money back to the city. Why? This is supposed to be for the kids. No, the more you give back to the city, the better we look as assistant superintendents. That's the truth. So I could never spend all my money. Believe me, I moved it around. See, that's the other thing. Principals, I came out of the nonprofit world having run organizations like Hartford Youth Scholars, Community Farm, and Simsbury. So I ran my own budgets. Principals aren't expected to know how to run budgets. So it's expected that the district tells you how to spend your money. And then you give certain money back to the city. I think over $5 million when I was principal was given back to the city. That could have been spent on education, but was given back. But I spent my money, I moved it around. They said, who are you? Why are you moving money around? Why are you hiring this teacher, that teacher? I got rid of security guards because we had a student leadership team when I was at Weaver that was gonna run the school. Why do I need 5 security guards when I could have 25 students doing the same job? And how much more authentic is it if the students are owning the school and managing the school on their own instead of being told what to do by a security guard? But you know, that saved us thousands of dollars that we can now put into education. But that was all discouraged.
Yeah, I want to share that is incredibly real. There's a former principal in a city of Hartford school, and like we really need to look at the scarcity mentality that we choose to add to all of our nonsense. But this is a Hartford public high school, and the budget was slashed. And this wonderful idea is like, if you're a good principal, you can do it with no money. If you're a good principal, you can do it with no money. So we're just going to keep taking and removing people. And they got rid of 2 social workers. And one of those social workers, a full-time person, took a job in the school. And this was like this beautiful place. Like, how sad and scarce mentality is this? The principal hired that social worker as a part-time security guard to continue having services and someone who knew how to access services for students. And this is what we do. So a big piece of what we're doing here, we are Hartford people. And as we are people who have a system that has been set up against us. And so many of us who figured out how to do good things have figured out how to finagle within a system, which is creating these beautiful places of individuals creating successes that aren't replicable inside the system. A whole lot of what we're doing here is trying to figure out how we create this. And this is where I get uncomfortable, right? Okay, so I become very uncomfortable because in my mind, this is the place of almost trying to do the God work. I don't like doing the thing of doing this, empowering people. But we're here in Hartford, and the system from our pre-K days straight through public education, we are made to understand that we are less than, that we don't deserve the same resources as other people, that we're not going to receive the same respect. I remember when when Hartford was first looking at privatizing the schools and Education Alternatives Incorporated, or whatever it is, they were going to come in. And the understanding was us as parents didn't know enough to be a part of this conversation at all. And we didn't know enough to be a part of decision-making. So it was okay. They could tell us what was getting ready to happen to us. And if we agreed with it, then we were good parents. And if we disagreed, somehow we just didn't have enough information and weren't bright enough to grasp this information. So we are doing these, and we're going to keep doing these conversations. And next week is going to be that Imagine a World thing. But we're doing these to really get everyone I want to hear everyone's ideas on what we need to do to make it better. But also I want to make it just normal that we talk about these big issues and these big problems that we don't have answers to, and that we all understand that it's incredibly normal to have a conversation that's incredibly frustrating because we all want to do these things that make it better. And we got a system that says, this is what it is for now.
Yeah, I have a question. I was trying to understand, Tim, you made a comment that as far as like hiring Black and brown teachers, and you wrapped in the teachers union into that. I don't understand that concept. Can you expound on that? Because to my knowledge, it's not like the school system at this point, they're not even doing, as far as all the new initiatives that's flying day by day, meeting by meeting, and the support for teachers that I don't believe, because it's a part of my platform that definitely advocates for staff in the building, not limited to teachers, but if we don't have staff that is well supported and able to deliver, we don't have children getting anything delivered to them. But as far as hiring, that is totally separate from the union. So if you could expound on them not wanting black and brown, that connection is not there for me.
Yeah, no one would. This is just something that I believe and have seen. Okay, so teaching has become a jobs program for white folk who don't have jobs other places. That's my belief. Now, if that's wrong, then I want to be proven wrong. I'd like to be proven wrong. But was a lot of people getting jobs in the district who were white, and I'm not about race, I believe in the human race. And if you want to have a job, you should be able to go for a job wherever you want to have a job. Like, I'm cool with that. But what I saw was racism, and I saw with my own two eyes white teachers who wanted more white teachers and didn't want to lose their jobs to black teachers. And I saw a union that was supportive of moving black people out or discouraging the hiring of black people. I also saw within the district itself more and more testing of teachers coming in. And I don't remember the exact test, Shantae, because it happened right around the time I was leaving, but they were instituting a test for administrators and teachers. And I actually went back and took that test just to see how I would do. And it was really, really hard. And it was, you had to be, I just felt like there were a lot of hoops that they were adding in to make it more difficult for those coming from places like Hartford. One of the things we try to do at Community First is hire people from the neighborhood. So I had 2 volunteers who served with us last year, and they're amazing. And they showed how dedicated they were. They proved their worth. And I said, we're gonna hire them this year as teachers. They're not certified. Okay, I have 1 certified and 2 non-certified teachers. Certification itself can become a money game and a test game. And so it becomes more difficult for people who live in places like North Hartford to be certified and to get into that place. So I just saw different barriers and hoops. And we've talked about this before, Shantae, there's supposed to be less barriers and hoops. When I don't know now, because I haven't been in it for a couple of years. I've been doing this Community First School on the side. But if I have a person in a community who is dedicated and shows the talent to be an educator, certified doesn't mean good. Certified just means certified. Okay. So if you find someone who's good, certified or not, I want them with my students. But the barriers that I see in place within public schooling is one of the reasons that I think what I like to call compulsory education for schooling. When I see barriers in place, to me and when I see the numbers changing, I'm sorry, I got my daughter here. She just knocked something over. When I see numbers changing and going from 1980s, more black folk to 2000 less, I start to wonder why. And so my own experience when I was principal is that there was under the covers kind of quiet talk about, and when they started to put a little pressure on me because I was doing things outside the box, some of the first people they went after, both the union and the district, were those black and brown folks that I had hired. One quick story, I had 4 special ed teachers, okay? One of whom said, why do you care about the students? They're not going anywhere anyway. Okay, this individual just happened to have very fair white skin, okay? There was 3 other white teachers and 1 black counselor who was by far my strongest counselor. So when it came time, one of the things that they also do, you mentioned how they cut budgets or cut social workers. If you're not a principal who's following if you're not the yes man, then they will start to take money from you too, especially if you start using it in ways that they don't want you to use it. So they said, we're going to cut one of your counselors, even though we have more students. The population at Weaver was growing during that time because students were coming back from the correct schools and the choice program to come back to Weaver. As you know, Weaver has grown and now we have the new building and all that stuff that was going on back when I was principal. But what ended up happening is they said, we're going to cut one of your counselors. I said, and I looked at the collective bargaining agreement, and the bargaining agreement is always mostly based upon seniority, but not with counselors. With counselors, you can choose the one who you think is best for the building. So I chose the younger Black person as my counselor that I was going to keep. I was not letting that person go because she was making a tremendous impact in the building. I was going to let go some older folks who really didn't even really want to be there or work with the Black population. I had one counselor who actually said to me, whose side are you on, Black or white? That was said to me. I said, I will not meet, I'm on a student's side, is what I said. And I will not meet with you again unless there's another person in the room, because someone needs to verify the fact that you said that, because obviously that would never be admitted to. And when I made the choice to keep the younger Black counselor, who to this day is now in New Britain and doing an amazing job, but ended up leaving Hartford. This person, my supervisor, who was also Black, said, no, you may not do that. I said, why? It's within the agreement, because you will be insubordinate. You cannot make that move. It's a top-down mentality that's not for the best interest of the student. But this was a specific instance where white counselors were approved over the more effective Black counselor. And that's not based upon the skin color. That was based upon the ability of the person, the human being. But this is all the stuff that goes on under the covers. And now any other Black person that I hired started to be targeted because they were becoming larger in numbers. Now, I know this is Connecticut. That's not supposed to happen in Connecticut, but we are one of the most
Yeah, it is.
in the nation.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So this is the reality of the situation. So that's just one piece. And that's not even I'm not even looking at that as the structural piece or the foundational piece that's racist, that is causing the damage to children in Hartford. But this is another piece on top of what we're already dealing with the system. And people aren't going to talk about this, but that's really what's going on behind the scenes. There is racism behind the scenes. And I think one of the other things that sometimes white folk are dealing with now in the classroom is they haven't believed in the Black student for a long time. Okay, and they have not been really giving their best in the classroom. And they have this concept, well, the kids aren't going anywhere anyway, so I'll do my best. I'll collect my paycheck. I'll do the best I can and I'll move on. But once you realize, especially with let's say there's a principal in place who is really empowering the students or empowering Black leadership within the building. And you start to realize, oh, there's great capacity in these folk. And I have not been treating them that way. Now you start to feel guilty. So you go back and you say, well, this guy can't be right. There can't be this capacity in this individual, this person whose skin is darker. I must be right. And now you start to fight it a little bit more instead of just eating some humble pie and say, man, I've been messing up for the last 20 years, not believing in students, and really own that. Instead, you fight against it. And I started to see that that's what was happening in the building. People were fighting against Black empowerment. People were fighting against Black leadership. People were fighting against the capacity of children to be successful. That's a long answer to what you asked, but I just saw that when in the building under the covers. Some of the stuff I saw under the covers that forced me to say, I can't put my head on the pillow anymore in this district if we're not going to really support change. If we're going to continue.
I just wanted to point out that there is a union and there is hiring, what we call talent management, which is human resources. They are not connected. So I just have a huge problem with generalization. I respect your passion, Tim, but I just feel that your experience, that is almost as if that is described as the experience and the reality of an entire school system. I know you are not a school system guy. I do believe in the school system. That's why I'm there. It needs to be better. I don't believe in, I respect schools that are not affiliated with the school system. They have their own, like your school, you do your own thing that you feel is best for children, but the majority of our children are in this school system. So that's why I'm in the school system, whether it's being on the board of ed or just being a parent, an advocate, that won't ever go away. But I have a problem with generalizations, even though I know some things we can't generalize, but I just don't. And only because being a substitute teacher for 4 years, I went to many schools and I was a part of many school communities. And unfortunately, definitely what you're describing, that is absolutely terrible. But I'll continue to say I've seen great work in Hartford Public Schools. I don't believe we are a system that is adequately supporting as we should. And I do have a problem with that. I think our school system has become better since your days at Weaver High School. But I see someone hand up, so I'll hush.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that I want to definitely get back to this because I want to talk. This is one of those places of the uncomfortableness of systemic white supremacy is what I call it. Systemic racism is where it goes to. But when we look at credentialing and all of these barriers that get into the way of truly serving communities because of what the system has put in place, understanding this is important. If you're watching us on Facebook, then you're not privy to what's happening over here in the chat. But I just shared Zora Neale Hurston's to the Orlando Sentinel, her letter to the Orlando Sentinel, when we were looking at desegregating schools. Now, that is an angry Black woman who said, once we desegregate schools, our children will not be with people who love them, who look like them, who care and are invested in their future. And therefore, we're going to see really horrible things happen. Everyone knew that this wasn't true. Lots of people decided that this wasn't true when it happened. It played out. We see this. So Tim is figuring out how to get people who are not credentialed, but of the community that these young people come from into the classroom. This is something that can't happen in a public school classroom. So going back to my days in daycare, I can tell you about the most wonderful father who we had. This man didn't have a day job. It was the 90s, people. This father was home during the day. And this father, I will tell you that he brought me coffee, but we're not talking about the coffee. We're talking about a father who was dedicated and able to be in a classroom as this great parent who knew all of the kids' names, who was a father who brought a male energy into a classroom that didn't typically exist in that classroom. This man was amazing. And he had a dirty background check that said that he was not allowed in the classroom. And his children had to grow up knowing that their father, who loved them so much, was not allowed to go on field trips with their family. So as we really look at this, the system creates these places. And these are the conversations that we have to have. My personal value system, the man's arrest, it was the 90s. All of his arrests, everything that made him dirty was about drugs and moving drugs around. From my perspective, have him in my classroom. I don't care. I know that there are people who have different feelings about this. How do we figure out how to create places where we do what we're supposed to? But Violette, what's up, beautiful human?
Hi, how are you?
Life is wonderful.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my video off because I can't figure this stuff out. But I work with a lot of kids, and the first thing I want to say is there's a difference between being educated and being intelligent. Our kids are intelligent, but the way that they are evaluated, their intelligence is evaluated within, I'm going to say the system, the school system, does not reflect their actual intelligence. And part of that is because what has been deemed important versus, your innate skills. So I just want to make that distinction. I think it also goes back to even the people who teach us. You can be educated, but you cannot, you may not be intelligent. But there are a lot of things that are impacting our children that when policy is made, I don't think we think about the unintended consequences. And one of those is our Black and Brown students are being taught that in order to get a good education, you have to sit next to someone white. We have the magnet schools, the charter schools, and all of these, the project choice, all of these things that came about, and our children, that is what they are learning. That I don't think was what we planned on, but that is kind of like the end result. And with all the various schools, our children now have a hierarchy of how they view education in the city of Hartford. And they will talk about it. If a charter school is better than a magnet school, which is better than a community school. And in their minds, and because of this hierarchy that they have come up with for whatever reason, that's how they treat their peers. And as I said, that's an unintended consequence. So in addition to the education, we are creating this whole environment that our children are living in and that they are buying into. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is fueled by money. You know, I personally, when I hear the superintendent say that 88.2% of eighth graders cannot do eighth grade math, and nobody is jumping around saying, "Are you serious? Something has to change." That drives me crazy, because so we're saying only about 10% of our eighth graders can do eighth grade math. If you can't do eighth grade math, you can't do high school math, you can't do college math. And if you can't do eighth grade math, could you do fourth grade math? So where do we begin? And I believe it's a system. I believe that the end goal is a prison to pipeline, or maybe our new prison is Amazon or one of these warehouses that's popping up. And I think systems are built to support themselves and sustain themselves and maintain themselves. And whether or not we say it's a system, we can all acknowledge that what we have is not working, and it is not serving our children, and they are not being educated. And we have to figure it out soon, because this is the next generation of our future leaders, or else the state, the government is going to come in and they're going to own Hartford school system, because we cannot continue not producing young people who can maintain themselves, support their families. So I just said a lot, but I just wanted to add that perspective.
Thank you. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the young people you work with? Because I brag about them in the work that they've done, the asset-based work they've done. What is your perspective? And we've got your perspective about what's wrong, but what's your perspective on how to work with young people effectively? Because you are someone who I respect, because I see the young people who you work with, and there's some competent young people who are able to step into the world and own themselves. So you're again, you get what you put in stuff, and you get that. Clearly what you're putting in is creating what you're trying to create. What are your perspectives on what our kids need?
My perspective is that our children are intelligent, but they are not told that they're intelligent. They are not given the opportunity to think, to make decisions, and to understand the ability and the power that they have. There are so many rules and so many things that they have to follow that they just don't have the ability to have a vision, and if you give them the opportunity to think and be creative and problem solve, you will be amazed at the solutions and recommendations that they come up with, because they see the world in a completely different way than we do. And they have a different perspective, and they have a lot to offer, but we don't go to them and we don't say, "What do you think the solution is?" And a lot of times we're quick to say, "No, we can't do that. We can't do this," instead of saying, "Okay, this is your idea. Let's see, let's think about it. Let's look at the pros and cons, and let's see if it's worth doing, and then how can we do it? How can we implement it?" We don't value our young people and their ideas. And they are intelligent, they are brilliant, but by the time they get out of school, they've been beat down so much because of what they've been told they don't know or they can't do, that they've just, like, their spirit a lot of times has been killed in the process.
I believe there's a way around this. I really do, but I want to just affirm what you're saying, because the question I want to pose to you is this: if hundreds of thousands of Black and Brown students from Hartford, New Britain, Bridgeport, etc., were now educated to the fact that they could go to college, okay, or that they had access to more jobs or whatever, what would happen? If they were truly prepared, what would happen? If they were valued, what would happen? So here's the thing, you say the system is not working. I think in some ways it might be working exactly how it's meant to be working, because the reality is they want, this is something that has been set up. This is not something that is just happening on the side. This was set up so that there would not be access to those places of power outside of a few exceptions. So I think that that's where the real work is, to attack this system that enables students to be devalued. And so you're right, when they end their high school experience, if they even get that far, because remember, many students drop out, and chronic absenteeism is still at astonishing rates. But here's the other thing that I wanted to say about chronic absenteeism quickly, because I believe this is systematic and this is meant to be, okay? If you are going to a place you're going to be hurt, or you're not really happy, or it's not something that's going to be beneficial to you, why would you go? We don't do that as adults. If I was if I got season tickets to the Giants, I would take them. I would either go because I want to go, or I would sell them because they're worth something. But I would do it because I want to, and 9 out of 10 people would. But if you're going into a place where you're not valued, where you're not really being taught much, where the people there don't really believe in you or know you because they're not from your space, they don't understand your ethnicity, they don't understand your culture, and you know you're not really in a safe place, why would you go? And yet we encourage, oh, well, it's the student's fault, it's the parents' fault for not being in the school. I don't say that students are off, I say they're smart, because none of us would go to a place like that. And the reality is we have created chronic absenteeism. This is not something that's a parent or student problem. This is a system problem, and it's meant to be. We could stop chronic absenteeism in a year if we changed the way we educate it. But that's a challenge, because that means you have to change the system that's creating the gaps in achievement and the chronic absenteeism, which is purposeful, I believe. Now, I know that's a tough statement, but I don't see it any other way when you look at the facts and you really look under the covers. Anyway, I want to affirm what you said, because I felt like it was very strong, Violet, and true.
Yep. And one of the other things that I noticed is this grade inflation. I have worked with kids who are in 10th grade and they cannot write a paragraph, and they're on the honor roll. And it's very difficult for a parent or a child when you say to them, this is not, you have to redo this. You know, you need a period, you need sentences, grammar, all of those things, when they're being told that they're on the honor roll. And I look and I'm like, how are our kids going to compete in the world? Because we're not competing with just people in Hartford or, people around the state. We are in a global competition. And when an A is not an A is not an A, all A's are not equal, and trying to get young people to understand that, and then trying to get their parents to understand that, why is our schools giving these kids these grades that are meaningless?
Because they're Black and they're not as good as other people, and therefore we need to give them a grade so that they'll feel good about themselves.
We're not supposed to be in that
When we
space.
think about, again, so systemic racism is what it is, and it's upheld by human beings. And knowing that in 1980, there were 80% of the teachers in the city of Hartford were Black and brown, who came from communities
That
similar
was
to
60%. It was 60% white, about 40% Black and brown. Now it's about 80% white, 20% Black.
now. And again, going back to that Zora Neale Hurston letter, and going
Right.
to what we know about what white people know about Black people in this country. So anti-racism is wonderful. The work that we do here at the KCC is cultural humility work, so that white people, when they learn the facts about our lives, don't go feeling sorry for us and come into our schools and give us A's because, oh my God, they've had it so hard, they need this A. We really need to look at what that looks like. A whole part of that grade inflation, it can simmer all the way down. It simmers down to those federal dollars. Those federal dollars are important. But deeper than that, it speaks to an insidious racism that the city of Hartford, and I'm not going to just blame my city, it's something that most school systems have not figured out how to address. Columbus Day of 2019, Isaiah came home with his little Nina Pinta and Santa Maria, whatever it was. And, I'm there talking to his teacher, who was a very nice white woman from Wethersfield. She was a very nice white woman whose friends collected tissues and all kinds of things. So us as parents, because the district does not give them enough supplies, the understanding is, as parents, we've got to bring stuff in. We were lucky because the nice white lady teacher from Wethersfield had nice friends, who I'm assuming were probably other nice white ladies from Wethersfield, and they over the summer gave her things to come give to us, right? So we've got whatever that is. But Isaiah comes home with the Columbus Day stuff, and I'm like, you really do this? Like you really do Columbus Day in the school? And what I got was, you mean teach them the truth? So speaking to chronic absenteeism, it is our children keeping themselves safe. It is very often us figuring out how to keep our kids safe. We don't know how to address racism. It's what we've dealt with. If you are a person sending your kids to public school in Hartford, guess what? You probably grew up in Hartford. And if you didn't, you probably grew up in a community very similar to Hartford. Talking about the way that we look at the different schools in Hartford, when Isaiah was in public school, many people who I love who are Hartford residents, when I said he was at Kennelly, there was the shame and the, maybe he'll get into a crack school. Well, so there's this weird thing that just happens here, where regardless of what we're trying to put into it, we know what the great shame is. Regardless of what we're trying to put into it, there's an understanding that Black and brown kids in Hartford are not as good as other kids and are not as deserving as the same type of education as other kids. So as we step into the conversation, we're not even looking for excellence. We're looking for better than can't read on an 8th grade level.
The part about that bothers me most about that, Kimora, is that we are setting that up from the time the students are young. We talked earlier about preschool and kindergarten. We're setting up that narrative for the student themselves. So we're not just trying to, that's not just a white narrative. The system is creating that narrative within young Black and brown children as well, so that they devalue their own selves based upon their ability to learn, when the reality is they're just as capable, but that's not the message that they're hearing over and over. And I do see that the system itself is helping to create that narrative, not for everybody. Okay, I'm not saying that happens for everyone, I'm not overgeneralizing, but just look at the data. The achievement gaps, the chronic absenteeism, everything that we see, we are doing that to our children. And it's unfortunate. I want to read a very quick quote. And, it was from Woodrow Wilson, who started education. Now, you've probably heard this before. He was president of the United States. It was around the time public education, compulsory education was starting in this country. It was, the different Columbia teachers colleges. This is a time when people really believed. This is when racism became a real thing in America. Racism is an American creation. The idea of race, that there are different people groups with different abilities to achieve academically or whatever, which is not true, but what has been sort of foundational, scientifically tried to be proven in this country for years. But this was around that time when he said, we want to make a liberally educated person out of a few, and we want to make a skillful servant out of the many. There's two things wrong with that in education. One, that we want to make somebody into something at all. We shouldn't be making anyone into anything. We should be letting their God-given talents come out. We should be empowering what's already there. But that's when you think that education is not making us into things, or not purposefully doing it. Right from the foundation of public education in this country, it's been meant to make people into something. It's not about entrepreneurship. It's not about critical thinking. It's not about empowerment. It's not about purpose. It's about making people into how they can best serve the wealth creation in this country. To think that the Hartford public school system is not making children into low-wage service or incarcerated people is to not see the truth, I believe. We're making students into that by how we educate them. And until we really look at that at its core, how can we stop making children into something? How can we see who they really are as people and bring that out of them and really look at, okay, this is an amazing human being with all the capacity in the world, as much or more than anyone else who has lighter skin. How do we make sure that student sees that and knows that inside? To me, that's where education has to start. So if I were going to run for the Board of Ed, one of the things I would say, that would be my goal. How do we change our system so that children see that, their internal value as a human being more than anything else?
As you're saying that, I started smiling because I was thinking about parents, right? And I was thinking about what our job is and what our role is. And just like, it was an ironic smile. So I've got a brand new employee and they are from New Jersey. They're not from Connecticut. They're not from Hartford. So all of this is brand new to them. And so I'm trying to get, and this is my outreach person. So I'm trying to get them to understand what it is that we do and what it is that we're inside of and what it is that we're navigating. So to get ready for today's community conversation, I asked them to put together a list of all of the candidates of everyone who's running for Board of Ed today, right? And I was like, okay, so this is a good one because I'm Hartford, so I know how this is gonna go. They're sitting, we're working here now, so they're sitting on the couch, like, this is gonna take a while. In about 20 seconds, she was like, oh, I've got it right here. What? You got what? And I walk over and the first thing that I see is this beautiful screen and there are a ton of boxes, you know, all the same size, all uniform, and they're videos, they're candidate videos. And I look a little bit closer, it goes, that's West Hartford. No. So if you are a parent in West Hartford, or if you're just a concerned citizen who lives in West Hartford and you want to know who's running for Board of Ed and what their stance is and what their platform is, you can go to one West Hartford run website and all of them are there on the same page, and you can just click on box and there's this video of this person sharing who they are, what they represent, and what they're running on. It took Ari quite a long time. Once we got to, no, this is what we're doing. Oh, it's here. Oh, it's nowhere to be found. It's not. So our children aren't going to school because they're disaffected. Our parents aren't voting because we don't even know who's running. We don't know what anyone's running on. We don't know how any of this works. And our city isn't doing anything to make it easy for us to get that information. So I think when we really think about this, Violette, one of the things that her young folks did was they did a beautiful asset-based map of the north end of Hartford that told us who we were from a perspective that said we weren't crap. I need my city to give me something that shares information about the Board of Ed and what's happening with the Board of Ed that lets me know that they value my opinion and that it's important that they share with me who they are and what they want to do, because I'm actually the person who makes that decision. Yeah, Violette, you shared Hartford Votes.
Yeah, they have a video of, I think there's 4 people running and 3, everyone submitted a video. They asked them the same questions, but one person declined to respond or couldn't get scheduled. So the other people are there. And it's a video of them and what they stand for.
They actually interviewed us. So that's what they actually put together.
And who runs that?
A League of Women Voters, I think.
No, I think
Hartford Votes.
Hartford Votes, Richard Peter. I think that's his name. I think he's the chair. Richard Feeder, F-I-E-D-E-R.
Beautiful.
It wasn't just
Yeah,
him.
Richard
It was a couple organizations. It was a student from UConn also. That was a Hartford school graduate. But that's something they came together and invited us to, you know, they had questions, conversation, and whomever, you know, accepted the invite. And I know the African American Alliance, NAACP, and the Blue Hill Civic Organization has a forum this Saturday at the Hartford Public Library. I know the seating is limited. I think it'll be mostly it'll be streamed live and you could ask questions also, but that's happening Saturday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Mhm.
So I don't know the answer to this. I want to pose it to you guys, but one of the things that I've recognized and what we want to do different at Community First is I'm thinking about conferences, parent conferences, but I'm also thinking about how to engage the community to get votes out for things like this. We don't do conferences the way traditional schools do them. Even most schools still do conferences. They do a half day some days and they do after school, but our parents live such diverse lives based upon job schedules and everything else that we said we're going to do conferences, but whenever you can make it, you schedule the conference, not us. So if it needs to be 7 a.m., we're going to be there at 7 a.m. If you work 2 shifts and it has to be 6:30, it'll be 6:30 a.m. If we need to come to your house, we've built relationships, I think fairly deep ones that we're trusted now in homes. So if you need us, we have a parent whose son was paralyzed, she can't get out, she's stuck at home, we'll come to your home. But that's how do you switch? How do you flip the script to get people to, how do you engage the community outside of the traditional ways? It's one thing to be in a community like West Hartford and have that sort of understood how you vote, but our community doesn't function that way. And when I think about Simsbury or West Hartford, shoot, if what was happening in Hartford Public Schools was happening there, the town was shut down. Okay, the town was shut down and no movement would be going on until the school district was fixed. But in Hartford, we keep moving as if nothing's going on. That would not happen in any district where there's greater affluence and more connectivity. So I'm trying to think about how is it that we create a platform where people can be informed. I mean, we've been asking that question for a long time, but in terms of conferences, that's one of the things we did, because the concept of Community First School is, here's the community you're in. How does the school fit that community? It's not about the community having to fit us. We're not experts coming in to tell the community what to do. We want to know what the community is about, and then we design our school based upon the community needs. So how is it that we do that with this process? That's a question I just posed. I had never thought of it before, but I wanted to share at least how we're sort of looking at it in terms of school-based issues is the community first. The community comes first. And so everything we do is based upon the ethnicities, the cultures, the backgrounds, the jobs, the adverse childhood experiences, whatever's going on in that community is how we're going to design everything that we do, from the curriculum to the conferences to the after school programs. Everything is designed around the needs of that community. So I wonder if there's something there. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, Tim, I think you do exactly what we're doing right now. We had these types of conversations with Kamora. I know Jason, I see him, with the Greater Hartford African American Alliance. You create this space for people to come in, chime in, and put forward what they think needs to happen and to share their issues. And then you have people like myself, you have people like Shantae, we come with a solution and we try to generate energy towards certain causes. I thought that was, you mentioned something about having, going to families. I think that was very interesting. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, those are those solutions that I like to see how they work, and not that they're definitely, yeah, Tim?
No, I was just going to say, generally within a school system like Hartford, the parent and school relationship is adversarial. It just is. It's been that way forever. And, I can remember, advocating for a parent back at Waverly at one point when I was doing some pre-work for Community First School. And there was a parent who had a meeting with a counselor, and that parent went in to meet with the counselor, and the counselor says, today's not the day. Today's not the day we meet. And the mother came back out dejected and said, well, I swear, like this is when we're supposed to meet. I think I got a letter. I said, can you find that letter? Is the letter in your car? She went to the car, found the letter. Okay, now she was put off in kind of a degrading way too. She brings the letter into the counselor, says, here's the letter. This is the date and the time. We are meeting today. He said, well, I'm sorry, I missed it. Now we're going to have to reschedule. But unfortunately, this happens over and over where, special ed meetings, the experts come in with their ties, the parents come in, there's 5 experts around the table, 1 parent, and the parent is told what to believe about their child. This just happens over and over. And that adversarial relationship just builds. It takes time. As we work with parents, here's this white guy trying to tell them that we have a school that's for you. who's this guy? We don't know if we believe this guy. And then you got, we have our teachers who and we have our community support staff, which are mostly Black and brown, but it doesn't matter. It's this idea that the school and the parent are adversarial. It takes 4 months, sometimes less, maybe more, to try to build that relationship. But the focus is on that relationship. And we do family dinners with music and community folks who come in and speak and share and anything we could think of to try to show that we support the conferences when we do them, because that relationship between parent and school has to be mended. It takes a lot of work and belief in the parent. There can't be, I like to say there's the expertise of NEAG Teachers College at UConn, and there's the expertise of Albany Ave. They're different, but they're equal. But we have generally those who think, well, the NEAG Teachers College, they're the experts, they know what's going on, and we devalue the expertise of Albany Ave. That's the wrong mindset. There is so much that can be learned both ways. And once you realize there's an equality of experience, it's different, but equal. Now you're sort of on a more level playing field. And that's the
And let me share right now a problem that comes in with what Tim just said, and what those of us who are actually trying to do this work come up against over and over and over again. This is when our hearts are broken. We enter spaces and the cool, white, liberal, progressive, whatever word you want to use for it, the cool thing to say is that my UConn degree is equal to Albany Avenue experience. And this is what we're supposed to say, right? But the truth is, white supremacy says we don't believe this. So in the conversations that we're holding here, and Brian, just talk about how we come together here, this is the important part that we name as we're discussing it. So there are times when I'm going to shut down the conversation and say, what we're saying is the cool thing, and where people end up with their hearts broken is you get the job working for the system, and you know that that system values the wisdom of Albany Avenue just as much as they value that UConn degree that you brought in. And then you try to bring Albany Avenue into your classroom, and you have offended everyone. And the biggest offense that you have done, the greatest offense that you have committed at that moment, is you've made that white liberal look at their ideal and realize that they don't really believe that crap. And that is the place where the problems happen. So a big piece of what we're trying to do with these conversations is really flesh out where people are coming from and what we're looking for, because the truth is, white supremacy creates conformity that is easy. White supremacy is just easy as hell. Centering the child, centering the family. We have, again, years in education. When do we do these family meetings? Well, you know what? We do them in the morning, and then we do them in the evening. And twice a year, we're able to have our teachers stay until 5 o'clock because we've got this written in with the unions. And you're telling me that this mother is not available until 8 p.m. However, the union is in no way going to create a place where this teacher can meet with this person at 8 p.m. So therefore, screw this family. They can't fit into our system, and therefore they're the problem. And we can sit back here and be okay, because we understand that because of the union, there's absolutely no way we can expect this person to stay after, because ... writes, boy, this is the quagmire, and this is the problem that we're here to discuss and try to figure out how to address.
Well, I haven't, and I don't think I've been lucky. I wouldn't use the word lucky, but I've just been in situations that I have not had that. Like, I've had, staff bend over backwards for my circumstance, but I know. So we're a school system that has to you can't make everything work for everybody. But one thing I think we fail at is
my question is why, and keep speaking, but I'm going to throw that why there.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to answer it, but
I don't think it's possible. But what we could do, and that we don't do right, is allow parent empowerment, right? Because with parent empowerment, you will have to do certain things. You will. My children have been in in school buildings that the leader of the school building kind of acts like sets the tone. Like you teachers or staff, they know they want to be there because of X, Y, and Z, or they don't want to be there because of X, Y, and Z. Like the expectation at a school community I was a part of, it was clear. It was clear that every teacher is going to know the child's by their first name. It's like, so the expectation was there. So it makes it easy for you're going to accommodate a parent. This time works for them. Is not the half day, is not the scheduled conference. But so Hartford Public Schools, what we're doing now is a parent and caregiver academy, right? My thoughts for it was more of what I experienced when I think the district valued, I don't know if they valued so much the parent voice, but they were forced to allow the parent voice to exist, make noise, they had to respect it, and they had to make some changes because parents were unified, right? So I always had the thought of what if we could get back there. So for years on the board, we don't give parents a platform. We don't value their voice. We're not giving them a space, not even saying at the table. Like you're not even like at the table is just far-fetched. So now the superintendent is saying, we're going to have a parent and caregiver academy. But to me, it was simple. You have a full staff. Many will say, like Leslie will say, it's too heavy at central office. More jobs need to be at the school level. So I'm thinking we have a central office staff, we have curriculum specialists, we have math coaches, and we have everything, right? So simple things. A class, how can parents support their children in math? How can parents support their children in reading? How social emotional? How can parents know what to expect and advocate correctly in a PPT meeting? Just simple stuff that you don't need to hire. So now we're hiring a consultant. I was the only one that voted absolutely hell no. Like we have so we're going to spend $111,000 on a consultant to give us a plan and they're going to engage our community. So we can't maybe split that in 2 years. That was my proposal. Like, let's split it in 2 years, pay somebody $50,000. They can be from our community. They don't have to learn our community. They don't have to learn our CBOs. They don't have to do all this. They could help plan this caregiver academy, and a second year, they can help implement, right? It's grant funded. It'll be picked up. Someone will pick this up and fund it, this position and fund it further. But we opted for, we're just going to hire a consultant. They're going to go to community meetings and write down what everyone wants in this academy. We know what needs to be in the academy. We know what our parents need, but we go through this consultants know best. So not until parents are organized and that voice is solid and that voice is coming, because I'm in 4 years, right? In some meetings, there's not one parent speaking out on anything. So they're looking like, what parents really telling you this? Because they're not coming here saying it on this microphone. But I hear from parents all the time. But until parents force this interaction, I need to be at the table. I need to help you. Because one thing they'll say, oh, well, we've never thought about it like that. Well, I'm a parent, but I'm not the only parent. Like, and it got to that point even before I was on the board. Don't call me to be the parent. Like, because you're just looking to say, oh, we had parents contribute. Engage. The level of engagement, and it's sad because that was under Stephen Adamowski. So if he allowed the parent voice to be at the table, and we've like backslidden, like we're far from what we were 10 years ago. But we have to make it technical of, oh, no, we don't. We know exactly what parents need, and the staff never have the capacity. So we have all this staff at central office, and we don't have the capacity to right now give parents a support on what because we need them to do these things. That's what
We don't want them to, though. If the parents have that support, then we will not be allowed to continue hiring those consultants. And right now, I am speaking to Leslie, share this nonsense, right? Because I'm speaking directly to y'all dog park people on Hartford dwellers. That's what I'm talking about. You people who wanted fucking dog park, and all of you reasonable people who said, there's no reason why we can't do both, because many of us have said, we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have this. We don't have our basic needs met. And should parents show up and do a whole bunch of stuff? Hell yeah, we should. Are we as parents disaffected in the city because of what the city did to us? Hell yes, we are. So are we going to show up like we should all the time? Hell no, we're not. And just know that, just know that so many of us are so trauma affected that we will not show up, and will not. We do this to keep ourselves safe, right? And so those of you who care so much about dog parks and a quality of life, what does it mean that you're not showing up and thinking about the quality of life of our children in our schools? If we understand, like, are we really, like, we're a civilization, right? Are we civilized if we understand that the only people who care about the children in this community are people who gave birth to them, are their parents? What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us as a city that has had the educational problems that we have had for the decades and generations that we have had them, that our parents now have to go have meetings with the same person who is their abuser? And we want to sit back and say, well, you know what, if the parents aren't standing back, why should I? Dude, I can't stand up. And if you want me to stand up, then you, person who I don't know, go show up and say that my child is important. And if I can hear you say that, then maybe I won't have the fears of retribution, the fears of being laughed at, the fears of all the things. And those of us who've been in those PTA, PTO meetings, those parent-teacher conferences, we know what those teachers like to do to us. We know how they enjoy talking to us. I have been in a very strange situations with the second son. Don't worry, with the first son, I was a young, stupid Hartford mom. And so they treated me as such, and I knew how to act, right? So I understood that I was less than. When Isaiah showed up, we were in this strange place where I still look like this, but I've got a reputation that exists in different ways. I can tell you that I was in meetings and in situations in my son's school where the white principal knew that she needed to get between me and her other staff who did not know who I was, because they tried to talk to me like I was a Hartford parent. This is our experience. And so those of us with a little bit of a voice, and so if you remember when we first started this conversation, I talked about that playing God part. Hartford dweller assholes, that shit was for you, right? Because you come in and you think that you can dictate to us what our issues are and what we should care about and how we should care. We don't care about a dog park, not because we don't care about dogs, but because the city has made it quite clear that they don't care about us. I know that I want to see parents who can stand up for their children. And I know that there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen for that to happen. And Shantae, we can't even come up with a way. We've got to hire someone from the outside to teach us what a parent academy needs to look like. This is hard, not trying to do commercials for myself, but City of Hartford, we had that. It was wonderful. We had exactly what we needed. Luke came in. See, this is the fun part for me. I can talk about all this. None of you can. So you can all look and be like, oh, guess, oh, come on, Luke is our mayor. He's great. Screw you, Luke Cronin, because he came in and he got rid of the MMA, right? MMI, but he got rid of the programs that we had that supported citizens in Hartford so that we could be informed, so that we could think of our own issues and not have our issues dictated to us. That program that existed, Luke Cronin came in and got rid of immediately and quickly. And we are here. Leslie, you had something to say. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, that's okay. I mean, I just learned so much from you, Kamara. Thank you so much. But I was thinking when you were saying about people downtown, like people right around me that don't support the schools, it's because the institution, the school board, The teachers are always blaming the parents. We hear that a lot, where the parents get blamed. Like you said, they don't come to meetings. We tried to have a meeting, but they didn't come or whatever. And so that's back to the institutional racism and the white supremacy of the school. That's, you know, the whole institutional thing is always, I never hear it talking about itself or taking its own inventory. It's always the parents. Has to start in the home. You hear that 5,000 times from people that live in Hartford, you know, that people that have some responsibility in some of the schools. They're always saying that. I hear that a lot. Has to start in the home. We do what we can, but you know, these parents. So it's, yeah, we're just.
But that's what I'm saying. Why, to Kamora's point, if a parent, obviously, if a parent is not going to show up to speak on the behalf, if you know the issue, I for years spoke up. It wasn't my child's issue half of the time, but it was an issue. So if it at some point the community is going to have, somebody's going to have to speak up, because if someone in my family, this is what I do. They be like, Shantae, this happened at school, come to my meeting. No, I'm going to tell you what to do. When you get to a certain point and it ain't going the way it should go, because I'm explaining to you how it should go, then I will come and assist. But I try to train them to say, you have to use your voice, do this, that. If that don't work, then I'll come in, but I'm just not going to come in. But I'm going to speak up for whomever. If I know the issue, I'm speaking up. But we have to have that same mentality when we know we have families. We know we have families that are broken. We know we have families that are working. We know what families that they just, other things right now is might be more important in this moment that you have to handle. That is not that you don't care about your child's education, but you're just not going to the meeting. It's just not happening. When we are a part of a community that we know that is happening, it is our responsibility to be that. And I think if we start doing that, then that will be a good thing. But it just seems like you'll get people at other type of meetings. And that's why years ago we advocated for the speaking portion of the Hartford Board of Education meeting. Remember, it used to be after the business was, no, we said, no, you push that to the beginning, the public comment. But I'm hoping that we could get to a space, because if my colleagues are saying, well, you saying that's a problem, but ain't nobody else coming, like, I have to be like, but it is a problem, but it's just, you know, so without a voice of someone saying this is an issue, what it does, it always allows board members to have some kind of something, like, that speaker came, could you check that out? You know, because it's a real issue. Like, could you tell me how that issue was solved? And then you could say, well, if that's happening, is much more of that happening. But at some point, someone's going to have to speak up on the children's behalf, if it is not the caregiver.
I want to jump in for a minute and just say that if Shantae and Kamara were one of the parents at my school when I was principal, I would want you in the building as much as possible, speaking your voice, because how good you guys are at speaking it. And that's not the case with most principals and most teachers. They kind of want to avoid that voice, but that voice is essential. And I would love for you to, I want parents in the building as much as possible. We invited parents in all the time because we want to hear that voice, but you have to foster that voice. One of the things I saw oftentimes is what would happen is parents would rally and the district would come because the parents rallied. And then they would say, okay, we'll appease you with this. And then a week or two later, it's less. Well, we can't do everything you asked for. We could do this. And then the parents feel like, oh, shoot, like, okay, we'll take that. And 2 weeks later, they come back and it's less again. And now the parents are stuck. Well, we agreed to that less. Now we'll take a little less. And then they come back 2 weeks later and it's almost back to where we started. And I watched that over and over. And parents, as Kimura says, start to feel disenfranchised, disempowered, and there's not enough energy or whatever to keep it going. You also have the other aspect Kimura talked about. If it's a mom from Simsbury coming and talking to the principal, oh, that's a respected person who knows what they're talking about. If it's someone at Milner School, oh, that's a crazy person from the hood. There's just some bullshit going on. The reality is we need to be in a place, Shantae, like you mentioned, where there are more people, but we have to make it safe. And that's going to take time. That's a buildup. I would love to see that happen for the board to put together some type of situation where we build up a parent. I don't know if Hartford Parent University was the right format. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but something. And I also wonder, Shantae, you said something earlier. I just want to know, I'm curious. You said it 10 years ago, or maybe when Dr. Adamowski was here, there was some parents made a change. Was it just the speaking portion at the beginning of the board, which is a great change from the end? Was there anything else that the parents were able to do during that time? I'd love to know, because that's good information.
Many things. That's how
What are some of the other things?
school governance councils were formed as a result of that. I can't tell you, I think they were just sending me to meetings. You know how you be like, oh, Shantae go, but I was going and I was learning. I was a part of choosing a math textbook for the like, I was there. I still have, because they was like, oh, if whomever's presenting, they bring those books and they be like, you could take them. I still have some of those math books. Like, I was everywhere. When I say we did better, it was saying when we pick a math textbook, when we make decisions for the district, this is at the district level, they let a parent be a part of it. When we want to learn about the budget and the like, they really gave us a seat, like for real. We did things like, we want to know, like, if our kid is in first grade, like what should I expect this year to make brochures? Like, it was the Hartford Parent Organizational Council is what it was.
I want to jump in and say that here's how the system, it gave power and then it takes it back. Because what happened with the school governance councils, and I agree, I remember when they were powerful, right? Like, you actually hired your own principal. Like, the school governance council made those decisions. But I can remember toward the end, as the pendulum was swinging, when I was sort of on my way out, I had my school governance council that was feeling like we were bringing that power to them. And then in the end, the associate superintendent said, here's your budget. Here's what we're doing. Here's the changes we're making. And you get your school governance council to sign on to this, or you're done. And I started to see that pendulum swing back, where the school governance council started to lose their power. And I think at this point, there's no power left in the school governance council. But that's an example of, yes, I remember just how powerful they were, and now how they're virtually powerless, and how the system took back that power that was originally given to parents. I think that's what disenfranchises parents sometimes, especially new generations who don't know anything about that, and those who were part of it and saw the power taken away. I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe you could speak to that better, Shantae, but I've seen, from my experience, I've seen a lot of power taken away from the school governance council. But I do remember when the parents had a major and powerful seat at the table and were influence makers during that time.
I don't see as the power being taken away. It's the structure, the financial structure that changed in Hartford Public Schools with how budgets are run. It used to be much different. So with that changing, it just depends what parents, right, you have. Like I said, when parents know their rights, when they know the rules, when they know the policy, that parent, no matter what governance council, when you know what is supposed to happen, is different than someone is telling you what's supposed to happen. So that's why I think my original idea for parent training was along the lines of them finding out the truth and being equipped with that, versus what I don't even know what it's gonna turn out to be now. But we did pass a contract for the Hartford Parent University to do some of that work. So we will see. That just happened at our October board meeting. Blue Hill Civic is going to do some parent work and some work with some work with students and families at Weaver High School. Those are like the two that recently was approved with the ESSER funds that came from the federal government. So
I would suggest you give us a contract to work with the classroom at Wish and a classroom at Sand, and let's see if we can make some major change in those two classrooms. And if we do, then we can implement greater change across the district. That's my selfless ask of you, Shantae. I think that would be
well,
beautiful.
you know, I'm on the end of it. They be slinging them contracts. You be like,
let's get one for
it's a
community
lot.
first school.
And I think sometimes it'd be like they do this so you can't like keep up with it. I'm telling you, it's like, and when you pay attention to, if it's you put a plan in front of us that has some good stuff and some stuff, you'll say, hell no. And it's in the same thing. So it's like, what we doing? It is something. It's something. It is. And you can't remember everything. You ask for this data. That's what I'm saying. I need an assistant. And then we're not paid. So you'd be like, I asked for this. I'm still waiting to go back to, if there is a COVID positive case in a school. Last year, we got the same email that went out to parents. Why you don't want me to know if it's a COVID case so I can't keep track of what is going on in regards to COVID positive cases? So you kind of forgot you asked for that till it come up again, and you just, so that's why it is, I don't know that it will ever happen. With or without me, I just desire it to be a board of education that there are at least a few members that are gonna say, we gonna work together. We're here, you know, for the right reasons. We're here for Hartford families, and we're gonna strategize to make something work, you know, like, because you can't alone, you cannot keep up. You cannot keep up. You can do what you do. You know what you fight for. You know the questions you're going to raise. You know how to bring transparency, because through your questions, you will flush that transparency right out. And that's what I always try to do, so that don't tell me in the meeting, because the viewer or the audience member, they need to know and see that answer. Don't try to talk to me after the meeting. We're going to talk about this at the next meeting, because I am not the only one that needs to know. Someone else in my community needs to know. The public needs to know. So I'm just hoping that transparency will always be pushed, and the right questions are asked at the meeting and not after the meeting.
Leslie?
Hey, do you feel the way it's set up now, the Board of Ed, that you guys have any power? I always get the sense that you don't feel like you have any power at all.
Power, see, some people misunderstand what the board does. We vote, as far as hiring, only principal and higher level is who we vote on. A lot of times you get their resume a couple days before. You try to get familiar and be able to ask the right questions. We're not a part of the hiring process. We evaluate the superintendent, but we only evaluate her based on, so the evaluation is one thing. The goals that she put forward, that's where, and I think that is coming up very soon. When the superintendent presents you with the goals, that's when you're saying, okay, no, because when you evaluate her, you can only evaluate her on her goals. So you see how you have to be thinking when the goal presenting process happens to what you think should be accomplished and that sort of thing. Because you can't just say, oh, your evaluation, you didn't do a good job with handling COVID protocol. COVID protocol wasn't a part of her goal. So there is power, but in numbers. The mayor has 5 folks, 5
I want to jump
on the Board of Education.
Jump in on one last thing before I have to go, and I want to comment on what Shantae just had to say, and Brian, who's running for the board as well. I read that in the Hartford News today, how you were talking about how do you evaluate the superintendent, and do you believe the way she's being evaluated is appropriate, whatever. I can't remember the exact phrasing of the question, but I was thinking to myself driving today, picking up my daughter from school, what if the because Board of Educations in general across the country become, I'm not saying you are, but it's sort of how it works. The superintendent has their initiatives that you ask some questions, you try to get to the transparency, but in the end, it's a rubber stamp on what the district is doing. And generally the system does what it's going to do, which we've already talked about earlier. You know my stance on that. But what if you said, here's what we want as a board? Now it's hard when you got the mayor appointing 5 people, I see, and the board's not necessarily together, but if you really want equity, and you really want to end racism in the system, and you really want to provide opportunity for Hartford students, then this is what we want to see. And it's not about what the superintendent puts forward. It's not about the test scores or the metrics that they're putting forward as a district, but what does the board want to see? Is it possible that you could say, we want this? And unless you do that, maybe you're not the right superintendent for us, or maybe you are, but this is where we want to go. And we want to give you the power, maybe superintendent. We want to protect you so you can make those bold moves. And if, let's say, I don't know if Leslie wants to or not. I don't know her well enough. We have a relationship. I was principal at a time when she was an associate principal. We've been in several meetings together. I've met with her one-on-one when I was developing the school because we had a good relationship. We talked about it. But in the end, she needs protection if she's going to make the bold moves that she needs to make to create equity, if she even wants it. I don't even know if she does. She might be happy with her salary, just doing what to maintain, because she's straight. I don't know. But if she wanted to make those changes, could you guys protect her? Because I know that when I had protection from Christina, I could do whatever I wanted as principal to make positive change. As soon as Beth came in, I lost that protection. I was done. Plus, I was pushing the new Weaver remodel, and that was pushing against, the mayor at the time. So you lose that protection, you're done. Could the board actually say, we want to end racism? We want to be a progressive city. Hartford is going to be the only city in New England and Northeast that's going to really start to end the structured racist system. And we're going to protect you, Leslie, to do it. Could you do that? Could you identify, not her, but you work with her to identify ways to end the system that's damaging children? And could you protect her so that she could do it? Because she'll be attacked by the unions, probably the administration, the administrators union and the teachers union. She'll be attacked by different forces within Hartford that are going to want to not see gentrification along Albany Ave or whatever. Are you willing, and I don't really know the South End, so I can't speak to that, but are you willing to protect her or any superintendent who would want to do that? And do you have the guts as a board to say, here's what we want? Enough with the school talk, enough with the standardized test talk, enough with the data that you throw at us endlessly, enough with the consultants. We want to end structured racism in Hartford now, and we're going to protect you to do it. Could you do that?
We are. You're speaking, Tim, as if we aren't. You're speaking as if Leslie isn't putting things forth to deal with racism in Hartford Public Schools. So that's a part of her platform. If anybody has observed our superintendent, we have a very smart superintendent. We have a very she has a strategic plan, but you cannot, and as far as protection, we are who evaluate her. So I don't know who would we be protecting her from, because we are the body that, she's accountable to. But what we have to pay attention to, and that's with, you see principals come and go, like you see the high level people like come and go, right? We have to always look at people to say, are you auditioning for your next job? Or are you here? Sometimes sometimes boldness is too much. Like you had one bold idea and now you got something different. So bold isn't always the best all the time. I do think I've said many times that the Board of Ed has to decide what they want, and no matter who, and just like in a school, no matter if a principal leaves, it shouldn't be a scramble. It shouldn't be a total setback. The school should be set up in a way that if someone leaves that top seat, we're going to continue because we have a plan. And I think the school system as a whole, maybe the platform when I ran for Board of Ed the first time is definitely, there should be a plan no matter who's driving the ship, that this is what we do. And this is how we're going to do it. But think about it. We have a board that is some voted, some appointed. So how will we ever get to an agreement? It goes to what I said a little bit earlier. You have to figure out who on this board is aligned with what you want, and you have to work together. The mayoral appointees is like, you get somebody, they stay, and they move and leave, and it's just no consistency there, because we're gonna essentially have a majority brand new board, period. So if board members aren't willing to be aligned with each other, because this is not a paid, it's not a paid job. You have everybody's working and then they're doing this, and that this is a lot and is important work, but everybody sits in a seat for a totally different reason. We like to think that we're all there because we care about kids. We want them to be better. We want the system to thrive. But how far does that go? Does it bother you whenever there's an act of violence, whether it's the victim of the violence or the perpetrator? I always want to know, like, what school did they go to? I want to know, what was your experience? Where did we fall short? Maybe, like, what didn't we see? What nurturing didn't happen? What sign? And that's why I serve on. I had to figure out. I had a life-changing moment last month when I had to figure out, why do I do this? Like, why am I wired like this? And I came to the realization when I was turning 12, I had a brother 2 years older than me. Didn't have the same last name as me. His name was Kevin Hicks. He was missing for 2 weeks. They found his body in South Windsor. My brother was so smart, very athletic, very artistic. How could friends hanging out in the streets become more of a thing you wanted to do? Never dropped out of school, but when we think of things that are more important, and then all of your gifts and talents were not nurtured. So it wired me, and I'm telling you, I figured this out just last month. In everything I've done since then, I need, like a young person, whatever you have, I need that to be like blossom. I need people to notice it. I need people to think you're important for that reason. And I need to help you along your journey. So when I serve in this capacity, that's exactly, like, I need schools to be healthy. But at the same time, I need everyone in the school to be held accountable. I definitely believe in accountability, but our young people have something each one of them have something so precious. And just for me to think that we're missing that rubs me so wrong. So that's the one thing that definitely keeps me going all the time. What are we missing in our young people? Because one place they go is school. So that's that one place that we could say they were there. What did we do with them when they were there? What environment did we have them a part of? What safe haven did we create? And this goes to the school staff. This goes to the community-based organizations that we give millions of dollars to. What are we doing when we are when we have the opportunity to interact with our young people? We all have a responsibility. Nobody should escape accountability. Everybody should be held accountable, including myself, on and they try to make us so far removed from this. We'll approve a contract. I'll be like, could we go and see that in action? Like, could we get an invite? Because now I want and I'll shut up with this. Board members per policy. I cannot show up at Wish School and walk in and that is against policy. I have to make an appointment. I have to contact our liaison. She has to contact somebody to contact the school to let me. I don't want the board member is in the building experience. I want the natural experience. I want to see a parent frustrated at the front desk. I want to see how they responded to. I want to walk the hall. We can't just show up at schools. That's frustrating.
I have to leave, but I want to tell you, when I was principal, I said to hell with that. Any board member could come anytime, and I didn't care what they said at the top.
One principal told me that. One principal told me that, but I don't want to get him in trouble.
I didn't care because that's the problem. I don't want to get, no, you know what, get in trouble. Because Craig Stallings came every time he wanted. I didn't care because we had a situation in the building where he had to be there. And now I'm getting in trouble. Someone's reprimanding me because a caring board member showed up. Anyway, I got to take care of my daughter, but this whole thing it just goes back. So we have a system that is controlling us and keeping us from to really engaging and meeting our students where they need to be. And that right there is a place to end for me, because that's the kind of thing where you cannot be told what to do. You want to go to a school, period. And the principal wants to have a relationship with a board member, so what? The reason they don't want that is fear that the system will come down if people are real with each other. That's the bottom line. The system will fail, and they're fearful that they will not be able to keep that hierarchy in place if a relationship is developed between me and you, Shantae. That's dangerous to the system. Anyway.
We need to just change that policy.
That's it.
We need to change
in the policy committee, right? That needs to be changed in the policy committee.
System. Anyway.
Those of us who are studying white supremacy, what is bureaucracy? How do we uphold systems that are inequitable? We create policies, and guess what? Then we get to a place where, again, well, we all know, Shantae, we understand that you want to be in the school. However, we really have to care a whole lot about student safety. Bullshit, blase, blah.
Bullshit.
Issue. And this is where, please, I go out of my way. No, I don't. I just allow myself to be myself because I haven't policed myself for a good 20 years now, right? Those of you who have a filter, that's because you're policing yourself. Believe me, if you stop policing yourself, it gets to this, right? But this is the important place, and a really important place of this is we get to the place so the system's gonna do what the system's gonna do. Why? I will be the asshole forever and ask why, so that we can get to a place of, because if it doesn't have to. Because we have to uphold white supremacy, then fine, because none of this stuff has to be. When we get back to it, it has to be this way because there's a system of white supremacy that we're upholding, because there's this order that in some way there's this fear-based thing. And if we don't follow all the rules, it's going to fall apart and it's going to be bad. No, it's not. It's only going to get to that if we want it to, right? For real, we can do better. But we're getting ready to end right now. I see that Stan's here. So it's kind of funny, Stan, know that I've policed myself a couple times because I have not pulled you in here to get you in here because we need your voice. And also many of you know that I constantly say when we talk about us, the city of Hartford residents, and definitely our students in schools, I credit this incredibly brilliant man in my community, Stan McCauley, who says we don't have to pick the cotton if we are the cotton. And when I say that we're an Afrocentric organization, I mean that we center the lives of Black people constantly, no matter what. When we're talking about education, very often that whole wonderful thing about when can we hold our parent-teacher conferences and how can this happen? If we give a fuck about the teachers union and the teachers, then we are centering the wrong people. If we give a fuck about the teachers unions and the teachers, we are centering the wrong people. If we truly are committed to our students, I am in no way saying screw our teachers. Please hear me on this one. And this is where we really need to come together. We very often, because of competing, we center the wrong people. And if we really want to produce beautiful, loving human beings who are prepared to represent themselves and walk in this world as their best self, then we need to constantly center them. And if we're not centering them, don't lie to ourselves about what the fuck we're doing. Don't say, well, this has to be because of course it has to be. Friggin' be honest and say, you know what? We are centering the teachers because we're going to we've decided that we're going to center the teachers. And on this one, we're putting the students second. We're putting the students third. We're putting the students fourth. That's not going to get us to where I want to go, but at least we'll be honest. And in far too many of these conversations, we choose to not be honest. So thank you for showing up. We're going to continue the conversations. On Saturday, the African American Alliance is holding their forum. I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning. Get there. I know that they're working really hard at making sure that if you're there virtually, you're going to have the same experience and access as if you're there. Be there and then have these conversations on your own in all the ways. Tuesday, get up and go vote. Tuesday, get up and go vote. Those of you who've tried to do voter registration campaigns with me and you're frustrated because Kimora just wants to do this and Kimora's like, no, I'm not going to do that. If you are registered to vote, that's wonderful. Get up off your butt on Tuesday, go vote. And on Wednesday, we're going to imagine all of the beautiful things. So I know, and this, as we imagine, don't imagine with reasonable eyes, imagine with ridiculous eyes. So I would love to see every elementary school in this city be a 2-floor elementary school. And I would love to see that first floor be filled with all kinds of beautiful classrooms and that second floor filled with office space for every possible social service agency and community group that can help the young people in that building, and they should be allowed to be in there rent-free, just going back and forth and supporting. And then parents can be in the building, because I get that they can't be on that first floor, but parents are flooding that building all day, every day up there, and we've got this beautiful community building happening. That's a fantasy that I want to talk about next Wednesday. I want to hear your fantasies.
Dante and Brian and Kimora, let's open Waverly School back up for the community. It's sitting there doing nothing. Let's build that model at Waverly. I'll take it on. We got Build a Better You next door doing the clinical services with 17 out of our 17 students. We got community agencies coming in every day after school, from Urban League to 4 Unity CT to Savannah Jones and her dance company, whatever. Let's bring that to Waverly. It's a building waiting for us now. Come on now.
Well, let's go find that cute little white girl. Remember the little white girl who came in here and did a little teaching, and then she wrote the book about the students in room, whatever it was, that was based on Waverly, and her entire career is based on the book that she wrote about how she used
children room E4. That's it. The children room.
So clearly we got money. Let's go get her money, since she made her millions off of the backs of the sad stories of our little babies.
Let's go.
And then we could do this.
Let's go. Waverly School. Come on, Brian. Come on, Shantae. Waverly School. Let's open it up.
On it.
Man, I went to
for
Waverly,
real, y'all.
man.
Email the lady who wrote that book. I've been hating her since that book was published.
Eastern. Her
This is
name
her time.
Eastern.
This is her reparations. This is her reparations. She made millions of dollars off of this. This is reparations. Whew. Peace out. I'm about to go eat a burrito.
See you guys later. Peace.